what we are interested in is the integration of Mocha Pro and Nuke. I'm going to be using Nuke 11 for this, but this will work with any version of Nuke because Mocha Pro comes as a plugin, and it's great because if you learn Mocha Pro as a plugin in Nuke, you will know how to use it in DaVinci Resolve, you know how to use it in Flame, and you will know how to use the standalone version as well. Because basically what it does is when you open the interface, it's the same interface in all of them. So Boris Effects have done a really good job at, especially recently, because it was a self-contained software anyway, but turning it into a plugin has made the work a lot easier for compositors. So I'm going to start off with the first example that we have, and just look at this. So we have some planar and non-planar tracking here. So here's a quick example of some footage. Let's use some input frame range here. And quickly set this as well. Don't really need to, but might as well, because it's nice to be tidy with the project settings. So here we might want to do some tracking, put some logos all over the place. So the first example would be classical planar tracking. We'll just try to put something on the floor, and that is the example of what planar tracking is. So it is really easy these days thanks to the integration, because before that you had to, when you have your footage in Nuke, you have to then find it in Mocha and import it and all of that stuff. But these days it's really easy. You apply the Mocha Pro plugin and you launch Mocha, and it's as simple as that. And there's your footage. It's the correct frame range. It's all there. It's like that's amazing. And just quickly cache here as well, and now it's cached and should play back real time. Also note that I'm actually doing all of this off my relatively old, this is about 4 or 5 years old laptop, and this is working fine. So that's important. So the main thing about Mocha is that it does planar tracking. It doesn't do tracking points or features. It tracks textures. So if you have a planar surface, which even doesn't have too many details, it should still be able to track this thing. So all you need to do is define an area that you want to track. And the main thing to remember about planar tracking is that when you define this area, the shape that you draw here, this is just where it will search for the surface and the texture to track. You can actually modify this shape throughout, and that doesn't affect your track. If you have other areas that become visible or become invisible, you can adjust the track. Maybe you find that actually over here I now see more. I might want to track something further here. You can simply change this shape, track more, and hopefully that will work. The other thing which is new in Mocha 2020 is that they have changed or given us options to make the layout either simpler or the classic. So if you want just to see the essential tools, if you just want to track, you can actually just come to the essentials section in here, and you only have the bare minimum that you need, and just track from that, and that's sufficient. So you see it's doing sort of an okay job. I'm not perfectly confident about this yet. So let's try to adjust or stick a surface onto it. So we try to define this area that we're using for tracking. So I'm just going to move it there. Sorry, strictly speaking, we are not using this area for tracking. This will be where our corner pin outputs will be. That is our planar surface, and you can use a grid as well to really lay this out. So when you play this back, you should see if this is sticking or not. At the moment, it's sort of an okay job, but it could be better. So one thing that you could improve on this is you have to look at what type of tracking you're doing. So in the given case, we do have a fair bit of perspective changes happening. So I might just quickly retrack it. and just drag this backwards. Just going to go ahead and drag backwards. The button was over there. And hopefully we'll get a slightly improved result out of this. Now the question is, how are we going to get this data into Nuke, or how are we going to kind of combine our project work and all that stuff? It's very simple. You have an export tracking data button here, and because you're working from Nuke, that will be the first default option here as well. So if I say copy to clipboard, and in order to go back into Nuke, you kind of have this Mocha Pro plugin visible here. You can just switch to Nuke and drag it off. But I'm actually happy with this track. I will save and I will exit, and that's fine. You don't have to save that project any other way. You don't have to have a separate Mocha project. You can, if you want to actually give this for someone else to, usually a junior, to work on further. But yeah, this is it. You now have a track data in Nuke, and the project is saved. So just going to pick a frame in here that we will use as a reference frame. I'm going to do this as a reference frame. I'll put a corner pin from this and do a very quick paint work, which says, look at where we're painting as well. Very quickly say here, welcome to Escape. Welcome to Escape. So as usual with Roto, make sure you check your lifetimes. I'm going to replace the incoming footage and merge it on top of the original footage. And we should see, hopefully, everything sort of sticking nicely. And it's cool because there aren't that many tracking points to kind of follow on the floor. Going to minimize our questions and answers for a moment as well. So it's tracking the textures and doing a kind of relatively good job at that as well. So, and this is dark surface. This is not easy. Try to track this with any point tracking. It's hard. So that's the kind of classic example. You have a planar surface, you track it in Mocha, and you get a planar track out of this. Happy days. But usually you might ask, like, well, what if I don't have a planar surface? What if I wanted to do actually something harder? So this is where we will kind of go into more depth in here. What if I want to do something harder? What if I wanted to track something on this wall instead? So this is not a planar surface. It's curved. So, and it has perspective. So how is that going to work? How is Mocha going to handle that? It will handle it okay. But as a compositor, Mocha is just one of the many tools in your tool set. So we'll see how we combine it with any of the other tools that are available to us. So let's look at Mocha. Again, let's launch Mocha UI. I could have used the same other one that I already had anyway, but as a compositor, I generally actually quite often do like having separate nodes for separate intentions. So I'm just going to say that somewhere here we need to have some, obviously some Escape and Boris VFX logos. So I'm going to define this area for tracking, and I'm gonna again use my perspective tool for this. This part in here, again, the corner pin that you're going to be using for output is not needed for tracking, but it just helps you to sort of check if your tracking is working. So I'm going to turn on the grid here as well so I can see it, and I'm going to track backwards again and see how that goes. So it's going okay, it's sticking. And again, you might think that, well, we could do this with projections, but the also, question is, could you? Because if you need to do this with projections, you have the same problem that we're going to have, which is that you need to match geometry there, which has to be curved. And trying to match cylindrical geometries is not easy. So again, exporting tracking data, copy to clipboard, and I'm happy with my track for now. I'm going to save and exit Mocha. That's the really nice part about this Mocha FX plugin, is that you get this full interface. It has pretty much all the features that normal Mocha Pro has anyway. The features, or basically it has all the features that you need as a kind of standard user. There are some scripting features that are available, I think, at the moment in standalone only, but to be honest, I'm sure if you ask nicely, they will eventually include it if enough people use it. So that's cool. So we want to put some escape logos and other logos onto that wall over there. So we might want to do a few things. So I'm going to, the classic idea again would be just use it and match move it. But I might want to see things stabilized first. And as a compositor, I generally like stabilization, because if I see things stabilized, that allows me to get some original information from the image and things like that, which we will again see shortly. So I'm going to set this to be my reference frame, and I'm going to output from here a corner pin using my transform reference frame from this frame over here. And we should see that, that's our corners over there. And if I play this, it will go all sorts of weird, because what I'm, sort of doing at the moment is I'm trying to put original footage back on itself, and it's both moving. That doesn't make sense. The principle is that every match move is an opposite of stabilization. So if I invert a match move, it turns it into a stabilization. So that's cool. Now there's something else which is cool about corner pins, and it might be cool in the broad sense that this is only cool for compositors. But if there's anyone not compositor listening, it's still cool. Honestly, it is. This corner pin here defines a surface for us, and it's kind of telling us how those points sort of move that are on that surface. These points that I've given here sort of seem to have perspective. What I can do with a standard corner pin, and again we set this up in Mocha to start with, is if I go in here and I go to my reference frame in here, I'm gonna kill the animation on all of them. So it's not going to be an animated corner pin. So kill, no animation, no animation, no animation, no animation. And here's a trick. If I set this to input, I'm now changing my from and to points to basically remove the perspective from my image. So I'm kind of seeing like this was my wall beforehand. So now I'm as if I'm looking at it flat, as if I'm looking straight at it. And this is cool because that makes it a lot easier for me to try to put things onto it. So if I want to put some logos onto it, it makes this alignment a lot easier. So for example, I want this one to be further up. I want this to be sort of somewhere over there. And that's cool. And that's really easy. And that way I don't have the basic perspective in here. Now, I might still want to have a little bit of curvature in here, because you can see originally I did have some curvature on my wall, but my pictures, they are going straight on. So I might want to try to match that. In Nuke, you have a bunch of tools that allow you to make things more curved. So I'm going to use a grid warp as a simple starting point. Quickly draw it over here. Let's view the settings of this. Momentarily disable it. And just change my destination to roughly match what it is that we were trying to match in the background. So I'm just going to try to quickly add some of this curvature onto it. I don't need that many divisions over here, and I should be able to smooth some of this as well and just adjust these a little bit. So now when I enable this, you should see we're kind of putting this curvature onto this wall as well. So now our logos are curved like that. Now that's all groovy, except when you're playing your footage, the background still has perspective. So you will find that eventually it's kind of sliding, because as we were moving past this wall, it wasn't flat. So even though I've kind of made my flat footage look like it's curved, it isn't actually curved in the sort of strict geometrical sense. Nuke 11, actually starting from Nuke 10 onwards, has a cool tool called Smart Vectors, which allows you to analyze individual pixels and warp the whole image. The way it works is you apply Smart Vectors, which generates some cool vectors. And you use them to distort your image. You're distorting every part of your image to match your reference frame. Now, that's the standard way of doing things, but again, because match moving is the opposite of stabilization, you can use the stabilization techniques of the smart vectors to stabilize your footage further. So now, with the smart vectors, I'm also removing the, let's give this moment to think. I know. One thing you have to be careful is whenever you're doing corner pins, if you're removing distortion, you do get a huge bounding box. So I'm going to kill this bounding box by cropping it out, because I only actually need this part of my image. So just optimizing my workflow for the smart vector, and let's do a vector distort here. And get it to output a STMap inverse. Much better. Okay. So what this smart vectors is doing is it is trying to warp every pixel and stabilize it in place. So why don't we use that in the first place? Well, the thing is, if you look at the original footage, it would have to try to take the frames or pixels from here and match them somewhere there. And that's a fairly big search space for it. And trying to find these pixels on this frame, in this frame, is hard. But thanks to Mocha and thanks to the planar tracking steps we have done earlier, we have made it a lot easier, because now all these pixels are sort of still on the screen. So if we now stabilize this, it should stabilize substantially better. I will assure you it will do. And I'm happy with this result. So what we want to do after this is then undo all the stabilizations, because we actually don't want the stabilized footage as an output. We want to comp with logos on a wall. So for that purpose, what we will do is we will only apply this stabilization at that stage to our footage, and we comp our logos on top of the stabilized footage. And then we need to remove the stabilization. So we have to undo all the steps we did before. So I have to undo the stabilization here. So I'm going to switch this direction. I'm going to have to undo the corner pin. Undoing corner pins is easy. So if you look at this, if I press corner pin, I press invert in here, it puts it back to where it was. And if I take my earlier corner pin that was tracked with Mocha, that allows us to get this back as well. You might be asking, well, why do we need to stabilize footage in the first place? Why don't we just do this part in here, just have the logos? There may be reasons why I might want some interaction with my original footage and my stabilized footage. And one of these reasons is that if you want to have some quick color integration, you could take the original color of the image by blurring it by a zillion and transferring this color by simply multiplying your logos with that color. All right. So now we get some of this color from here onto here. Now those logos have some of that color, which is cool. And I can then take and put them back on top of the original footage, and they will look nice. In fact, the color matches so well, you can't even see my escape logo. So I'm just going to grade it to be a little bit brighter. But we've transferred some of the yellowness of the background onto this. And we'll play this back. I'm going to play back just half of my screen, again, just to show you this part quicker. We'll let it cache. I will take a sip of water. One thing you find if you're working, for example, with smart vectors, they cache better if you're going from your reference frame backwards, because your it has to what's the word? It has to calculate all the frames until it gets to the reference frame anyway. Nothing is working. It is because we also need to make sure we invert everything we did earlier. So we inverted perspective change. We also need to invert our stabilization, which turns it into a match move. I was just checking whether you were listening. There. Now you can see everything is awesome. So this is cool. And what it kind of shows is that planar tracking, like any other technique, is not a, it's not a kind of complete solution anyway. It's always part of a bigger compositor tool set. So that's cool. I'll leave this caching for now. So the important thing here, I'm going to put this on bounce, is that this wasn't actually a planar surface. It had curvature, but we mixed the techniques of Mocha to do a planar track on this wall, and this was really, really, really quick. And we mixed it with smart vectors, which kind of give us this sort of more detailed tracking that tracks every pixel separately. But a smart vector has its own problems, that it sometimes struggles with shiny things and things like that. So by taking out a lot of this original perspective, we can get this extra detail from the smart vectors, but also get the general movement from the Mocha. And it's really the kind of integration of these softwares that is the kind of tool set of a compositor. So you can see there, happy days. I will close this to save resources for my next script. So This time we have a quick clip in here where we are moving down the Holland Park underground station, and this footage has been camera tracked. So camera tracking, for those who know, involves figuring out how the camera is moving. And what you do with this is you try to put geometry into the scene, which is static. So when your camera is moving past that, you will it will move as if you're actually moving past the real world geometry. Now the issue is that it's sometimes difficult for us to position that geometry. So you have different tools in Nuke that help with that. So you have things that try to make point clouds and things by figuring out where is this camera in relation to the rest of this geometry. So for some of this, later on we see the back of the tunnel, we can see that really well. But the front in here, we can't, it's not that easy to tell where is this sign that we may want to paint. So I've tried to position a card in there and done a slightly deliberately bad job. And I've managed to kind of match it with the wall. But the paintwork that I want to do may be something that's not on the wall, but it's just in the surface in front of the wall here. And the paintwork itself might be something very simple. I might just want to do a quick one frame paint there to paint out the word shepherd's bush, to replace it with something that we might want to do ourselves afterwards. So the usual approach for that is you have a card somewhere in your scene, you take what you want to paint out to a patch, and then you view this patch through your moving camera, and as you're moving past this, hopefully those movements match well enough that everything will line up. So I'm just going to output from this a wireframe and a just view a few frames of this. I'll do it at some lower resolution to get some extra speed out of this. And you might see that they don't perfectly line up. It lines up with the wall, but in the front here, it is sliding. And that's a problem because that's what I will actually want to match. So I want it to line up with that area down there, but it will slide. And if you really look at this in the end, I've used some lower opacity to show this comparison here. You can see if I show our original footage without our paintwork, you can see just how far off this is. This is sliding that much. It's like, wow, that's a lot of sliding. So what has that got to do with anything? Again, excellent question. Thanks for asking. So what we can do with this is we can use other techniques such as 3D stabilization techniques to try to project moving footage on a still card. And as an output of that, we should get a fairly stabilized card. But our card is not stabilized enough. And the reason, again, like I said, is that this geometry that we've given it is on a different plane. It has parallax, and you can see here as well, things are moving in relation to each other because they're at different depths. So the wall is relatively stable, but this thing is moving. So again, this is something where Mocha could be really helpful, is you could add Mocha on top of this. Take a Mocha Pro tool in here. And you could try to track some of this 3D stabilized footage. So this is what I was mentioning earlier, where the shape and the track are not exactly the same thing. So if I start tracking this, I'm just going to go backwards from here. I want to include as much of this surface as possible to get some details on it. And I'm going to track backwards a little bit. So track. But I can now see a little bit more. I might want to include more of this in my tracker. So you can either extend this shape or make bigger shapes, whatever works, because the shape and the tracking data are not the same thing. You are just defining an area to tell Mocha, do some tracking over there. Over there, we should see some information that should be stabilized. And you can see, you know, this is again, it's tracking fast and it's tracking well, which is good. That's the great thing about Mocha, is that it tracks really well. So let's just include a little bit more of this. Not going to do the whole frame range just because it's slightly boring to look at. So I'll just do this section in here. And we can again align our surface. We don't have to. It works anyway. Corner pins work even if you don't set them up, because it's the tracking that makes them work. But it just makes it easier for us to visualize that. Hopefully now, if we export this data, and bring it into Nuke, I'm going to save this and exit Mocha. We can get a camera track out of this. Sorry, not a camera track, a planar track out of this. We'll use a corner pin of all those points. I'll pick this point as my reference, this frame here as my reference frame. Let's output that as my reference frame there. We will output the corner pin using our transform reference frame. And again, you'll find that it will initially do the opposite of what you want to do, but actually, if you then press invert, that will now perform proper stabilization. So now it will be properly stabilized. If only I'd actually remember to check the exact frame range I tracked. Let me quickly look at it in my curve editor. So it's from roughly in the beginning here until somewhere here. Let's do some from somewhere here. So in this frame range, we should see a good estimation of some stabilization. So you can now do things in a way that it really is stabilized. So if you do your paint work on top of this, it will stick. You just need to remember that afterwards you will need to undo all of those things, undo all the stabilizations, because the opposite of stabilization is camera tracking. So, sorry, opposite of stabilization is match move. Do some paint work. Paint. I'm going to be really quick and rough about this. Just paint something there. In fact, I kind of want it to be sort of really visible what we are doing. So let's do this on all the frames. And let's give it a small alpha channel as well. So for this area here, really rough about this alpha channel. We got a patch that we can put on top in the end. So what we want to do is we want to undo the extra stabilization that we got from the Mocha. So we undo our stabilization and turn it into a classic option, which is the match move. And then we want to undo our 3D stabilization and we invert that like this. So we should now have a patch that moves past our camera there. And again, we may want to use, actually no, this looks fine. So I might just quickly put a little greedy over here as well, so we can just visualize that now this sort of small grid here should be looking more as if it matches our front surface here rather than the surface at the back. Let's view this for a moment. So question is, why would you not planar practice in the first place? And again, the question is about pipeline and speed. So you can see now this 2D track that we've done on top of this makes everything match the element in the front rather than the wall at the back, which we had earlier when we got the projections. So really it's a question of taking the different tools and adding them together to get the best result. So the Mocha Pro is very good at kind of planar tracking, but you can make its life easier if you already slightly pre-stabilize your footage. It also has to do a smaller amount of work by only looking at pixels in a sort of fairly stabilized region like this one over here. So just showing that this Mocha Pro tool, it's and planar tracking, it's part of a bigger tool set for a compositor. Finally, just because this is something that we said we would show anyway, is and I just really quickly want to show that is the sort of rotoscoping tools and how that could be helped using Mocha as well. So I'm just going to turn off my nukes in here. The example that we have for that is actually from one of our student projects in here. So I'll just quickly show you this as well. Let it cache. So this is Agent Lennon running through a warehouse that's been taken over by some strange military equipment, and oh no, there's clones of her. Oh no, how's this going to work? So the magic of visual effects. So of course, when you're doing a clone shot, what you do is you film the people multiple times. So this was also, by the way, this was what some of my students did as one of their master's group projects. So they get to play with cool stuff. But we need to have her in this shot twice. So in order to achieve this, you need multiple footages. So I'm going to close this and quickly open this roto. So we're not going to do the whole roto because I can't think of things that are more boring to look at than other people doing roto. But again, it is a absolutely essential core skill. So if you find roto boring as well, you want to be able to do roto faster and quicker. So these are my two clips. So this is Agent Lennon looking worried and seeing her clone. And this is her clone not looking worried, but scary and menacing. Going to gamma this up so you can see it better as well. So the first trick, which can be helpful for any compositor, is if you have two clips that are different starting points. So one of them is starting at frame 930, the other one is starting at frame 514. You want them to start at the same time. You want to time offset them. But how much do I need to slide around these clips to match the other one? I don't know, but I know that it would be the difference what is between 930 and 514. So you can just ask Nuke, what is the difference between 913 and 514, and see what that does to you. And it offsets the clip by 416 frames. Good. And now they match. So basically now we match the timings. Also note that this footage that we actually have, will need some other work. First of all, it is static. It was shot locked off. Those cameras don't actually match, but this is small jobs for VFX. So in order to combine them together, what we would need to take in here is we would need to cut her out and put her into this other footage in here. So this is again something where Mocha can be very helpful. So if you do Mocha, and as relatively recent news, Mocha and Boris Effects, they have also bought Silhouette. So if you want to do rotoscoping even more thoroughly, you want to use Silhouette. And we've been teaching Silhouette here, well, ever since we've been teaching compositing, which is well over 15 years. So, and that's the rotoscoping software that the very, very big places use, places like ILM and such. And since Boris has acquired them, they made the integrations between Mocha and Silhouette also much tighter. So, so that's something that's also very good to remember. So very quickly, if I wanted to rotoscope her a little bit faster, again, we're not going to do all of it. I'm going to go to my classic view in here. I'm going to make my image a little bit brighter, just so it's easier to see. The main principles of rotoscoping is that you do things in parts. So what you do for her shoulder may be separate from what you do for her head, and maybe separate from what you do for her other shoulder, and maybe separate from what you do in the beginning of the footage compared to the end. So you try to cut things down into smaller sections. So for example, if I wanted to rotoscope her shoulder, I would try to track it first. So when you rotoscope with Mocha, and in Silhouette as well, using the Mocha tools in Silhouette, the tracking and rotoscoping are often different tasks. So if I want to get some tracking information in this, and at this stage it's just moving forward, so I might just use translation, scale, and rotation, and I'll just drag forward a little bit to see where she goes in there. Drag forward. Groovy. What you can then do, hopefully, is you can get some extra. Might track this a little bit tighter. I might include some of this edge detail here as well. Gonna track this again. Wow. In fact, I'm just going to do a translation. Yeah, that's doing okay. So for now. So we can see it's tracked something. That's cool. So what do you do with this? You use this in another layer that you actually use for rotoscoping. Now, this isn't a lesson in rotoscoping on its own. I can now turn off this layer because it's in the way, and I could start rotoscoping in here. I would zoom tighter to this, draw individual shapes to make sure that I have kind of good breakdown. If anyone has ever done roto, they would be like, wow, that's not a great looking shape. This, you're putting holes in there and stuff. But the idea is that you use the tracker to give you the general movement, and then you use any of the actual shapes to get the particular movement that you need to get the real details in there. So you just need to make sure that you link it to the right layer. So I'm going to call these layers track and roto shoulder 1, just because eventually I have many of these shapes in here. And by linking it to the track layer, it already has some of that movement. So what I need to do is I need to kind of go in here and begin to adjust these. And smart rotoscoping people, they would try to do this at sort of object level like this, using skews and scalings to really properly get it really tightly. If you want to learn more about rotoscoping, I very much recommend a book by Benjamin Bratt, which is part of our compulsory reading for the compositors on our courses. It's a book called The Art of Rotoscoping. You might think, is there enough about rotoscoping to write the whole book about? And yes, there is. If you read that book, you will definitely understand why. So again, we can take these shapes, make sure that they all use the tracking layer, and then do our adjustments on top of that. So here again, she's scaling a little bit, so we might just do these adjustments and continue rotoing. Okay, and that will take you, however it's meant to take you. I think professionals can probably do about 25 frames of full human roto in a day. So it's intensive, labor-intensive work, but this helps. So now you might ask, well, how do we get this back into Nuke? Excellent question. Thank you for asking again. So roto shoulder 2. And I'm going to exit Mocha. And instead of using the tracking information, which I could have exported as well, because it might be helpful for something else in here as well, you just look at your mats. You can view your mats, you can apply your mats. And by applying my mats, I have now put it into the alpha channel there. This is the area that we were tracking properly. And it's all coming through this Mocha Pro plugin. And the cool thing is you still have the control of choosing which layers are visible. So you can choose either either one of those shoulder layers. So that can turn some of them invisible if you need them, or you can turn them back on. And you don't even have to open up the interface. So this is cool, and this is really nice development from Mocha Pro in the last couple of years. Cool. This is everything I wanted to tell you about Mocha Pro today. We have about 3 minutes left for any remaining questions. So one quick question here is, does Nuke add in special effects like the blue holographic on target system, or is this with another program? We did it in Nuke. So my students did that cool stuff in Nuke. Nuke is a very powerful software. So really, it can do whatever design question, it's limited by your creativity. The 3D here was done in Maya, I think textured in Substance, but this was done in Nuke. If I remember correctly, actually the very tiny thing in there, the actual logo indent, we may have done that one in Photoshop. We also have a motion graphics course in here. So that was one of our graduates helping out our master students with this. But the rays, that's all Nuke. So yeah, you can do whatever you want in Nuke. Cool. That's pretty much everything I wanted to say. So really, where to from here? What I would say, check out our website. One really nice thing is that we have put up a careers guide. So we've updated it. So if you want to know more about visual effects in general, about different careers in visual effects or animation and games, you can download our free guide. You will have to sign up, but it's free. So you will learn about sort of salary expectations, what's the expected requirements from people, and other things you might want to do now immediately after seeing this webinar is, first of all, check out Boris Effects themselves. They have trials on their softwares as well. They also have good training videos on their website to teach you how to use their software. And check out Nuke. You can have the non-commercial version of Nuke, which probably will not work with OFX plugins, but there is also a trial version of Nuke, which I think works for 30 days, which is fully featured, does everything, um, and it has full plugin support as well. So yeah, and then hopefully you have enjoyed this, and I hope to see you in the future in some of our courses here. And please send us any feedback, any questions that you have about this, to our admissions team, and just info at Escape. And if you have any particular questions, I may be able to answer them as well. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you guys next time.